Hi everyone, I'm Matt.
And I'm Brandy.
And on this episode of the Chronic Couple podcast, we have our good friend Thomas, also known as AspergersGrowth, also known as the Thoughty-Auti podcast host. How are you doing today, Thomas?
I'm doing okay. Just, sitting in my house for extended periods of time with all the COVID stuff,
Yes, exactly. Do you think for you it was a big shock, like the isolation, or was it something that you were kind of doing before anyway?
I think like it's a little bit weird because it's more of like an enforced thing now, and I had quite a good routine before isolation. It's like I described to one of my friends. It's like I feel like most people when isolation came about, they just took off all the things that they can't do and just left the other stuff as their routine. But for me, I had to like wipe the slate clean and start again. So it's been quite a long time, sort of not really knowing where I am.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and too, I think you said it. There's a difference between choosing to be at home all the time and then forcibly having to be at home all the time. It almost like takes the fun out of it.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm kind of curious about when you say wipe the slate clean on your routine, like what are some of the routine things that you found have helped you now that you've, like you said, wiped the slate clean and changed all your routines?
I think the major factor in that is my girlfriend. Not gonna lie, she's got her stuff together. She's still going to work and stuff. So we sort of we have been like living together and stuff. So we sort of like sync our routines up together. So that's been a big source of routine for me. But I suppose like the only real way that I can get myself out of bed in the morning is to have everything laid out in advance from like the prior night. So, just it's a bit unhealthy, but have an energy drink right by my bed, just have all my clothes that I'm going to wear laid out on the floor, all messy like. It helps me get out of bed.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Probably.
Something about staying up late. I mean, both of us will stay up until 4 or 5 in the morning some days. And yeah, it's just, it does not help anyone's routine. Just to get in a little bit more on what we really came here to talk about, Thomas, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background and what's going on with you currently?
My name is Thomas Henley, and I am the founder of the AspergersGrowth channel, which is a YouTube channel where I talk about autism and mental health. It's been going for about 3 years as of now. It's got about just over 2,000 subscribers, which I'm quite pleased about. And I also, I do the Thoughty-Auti podcast myself. And that's been going on for about 4 or 5 months. Probably getting the time scale completely wrong there, but it's doing pretty well. And recently, I suppose I should tell you a little bit more about my background, I guess. I have Asperger's, if that wasn't already known. And I am a commonwealth gold medalist in taekwondo.
That's awesome.
For the heavyweight division. And I'm a biomedical sciences honours graduate from the University of Manchester.
Very cool.
There you go. Tell
us a little bit more about being diagnosed with Asperger's so young in life. Like, it was 10?
Yeah, 10 years old. I do remember it quite vividly, and it is something that I talk about a lot. I remember I sort of went and did all of like the autism kind of assessments and stuff. I think it was like ASOS or something like that. Sort of rings a bell in my mind. But yeah, I went for these assessments when I was 10 years old. And at the time, I think in general I was doing pretty well in life in terms of like friends and mental health wise and all that. But there were some aspects to sort of like the group dynamics and interacting with people at school that I just felt were a little bit off, or I just didn't understand. didn't really get my emotions down very well. A lot of stuff, I was just sort of like in open water. After this assessment, my mum took me to a McDonald's, got me a Happy Meal, as you do. So yeah, she sort of like sat me down and told me that I was autistic. And obviously I had no idea what that word meant. She said that it was called Asperger's syndrome, and she just kind of laid out the sort of general traits that autistic people have. We had a little bit of back and forth conversation about, me asking about certain things and me just going, oh, that's why. Even at the age of 10, I was getting relief knowing that all these differences that I was spotting weren't just me being crazy.
That's awesome.
But yeah.
That's really great that your mom sat you down like that and really explained it to you.
Because I've heard of situations where the parents would not tell the child, and I really just don't agree with that. I think that, it's important, because us both being autistic and not knowing until we were almost 40, I mean, it was detrimental to us. And
it's crazy.
So, if a parent of mine had known and kept that from me, I wouldn't be very happy about it. So that's really cool that your mom sat you down and told you those things.
Mm-hmm. I think that there was sort of as she told me, like, sort of in my adulthood, that there was a long time before, like, she actually took me to get an autism diagnosis. She started to really notice traits of autism when I was a bit younger, but she never really wanted to go and get me diagnosed because she didn't know how it would affect me and my life and, my ability to get a job and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, she did eventually get to get me diagnosed and stuff. And I think that's one of the only points in my life where I cried tears of joy, which is quite a touching memory for me. And it's actually one of the only memories that I remember from that time. So it's got to have some weighting, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not what a lot of people would think. People sometimes assume, oh, you cry tears of sadness, but that's not the case. It's like for us,
I'm dead, my life's over.
Right.
No.
Exactly. I'm an emotionless shell. Yeah, no. Not what people think. It's like we were afraid that they were going to tell us we weren't autistic. And when we found out, it was like a relief.
Yeah.
And did you have to like pay for your assessments?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And then we had to, it was very difficult to find a person that would even work with an adult. They just kept saying, we don't do adults. We don't work with adults.
Yeah. Even I don't know about the testing there in the UK, but for us, the testing was all geared towards children.
Yeah. We were doing building blocks and flashcards with like a family. Like, what is the emotion on his face? And I'm just like, this is for children. They just didn't have one geared toward adults. We just got the same one that a 10-year-old would get. So it was, then we paid for it. So
I can't remember the actual tests. I can remember like some memories of talking to like the therapist, but like I did this research. I took part in this research project on sort of like autism and social exclusion at my university, and they had to do like a sort of a short ASOS assessment on me, and I was just sat with this other dude like around about my age while he sort of looked at me like he got me to like explain the story of this like these toads that flew out the window or something, and I had to describe what the story was about, and I described it very poorly because I was assuming that there was a much greater, larger amount of detail to it than what's presented, but no, apparently not. I was definitely autistic AF, if I can say that. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like for us, it was almost like this hindsight's 2020 experience where we had all of these behaviors that we had no idea why we did that, and then as soon as we found out, it was like, just these like months of random memories flooding in, like, that's why I did that. Oh, like, and almost like this feeling at first of like disbelief, like, but did they get it wrong? Am I really autistic? And you doubt.
It's like you go through like all the stages of like mourning and stuff, don't you?
Yeah.
Just like you're like angry. It's like, why didn't I know? And then, oh god, I feel so sad. Like I must have done these wrong things. But you know what? Actually, screw them.
Yeah.
Like I'm different, and they should have. You know, it was their fault as well. And then eventually, like, you know what? Everything's up in the air.
Yep.
Like
exactly.
Nobody's to blame to some extent, I suppose.
Right.
Depending on a few cases.
And I think now too, it's amazing because so many of us can show other people that autism is a spectrum. It's not what you think it is. It's not this, static, just shallow definition of the word. It is so much more than that. You actually have a leadership award from your university. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So as part of the biomedical science course, it's the reason why I took it is because it's basically the broadest area of science to do with humans. So it means that you can sort of like pick and choose modules. And I basically got to choose every single one of my modules, apart from like a dissertation module that everyone has to do. And one of the ones that I decided to take was the Manchester Leadership Programme. And it is a standalone module. So you basically just have to talk and discuss about various details or opinions or topics. Write a little bit about how you would go about solving a certain issue and why, reference it and all that. And at the end you get obviously a mark for the module. But then they also have this added on thing that you can do, which is basically doing charity work as well. And I decided to do that. And so I went to a club that I know quite well. It's one of the clubs, the taekwondo clubs that is under the name that I sort of fought under. It's in a different place. It's up in Manchester. It's called Horizon LGA, up in Rochdale. And I just went there and I did coaching for free, basically. And I went to a couple of competitions, helped some of the kids who are on the spectrum do like the first competitions, to kind of support them in the warm-ups and all of that kind of stuff.
That's
and
cool.
I did about 70 plus hours of work all in all. So they gave me the Gold Manchester Leadership Award.
That's awesome.
So cool.
That's really cool. Did you feel like that leadership courses and doing that many hours of coaching like you did, do you feel like that helped you with just interacting, doing like your podcast and your YouTube channel?
Yeah, I think it's sort of I go about life sort of doing things that I want to do, but I always sort of try to mold it around my sort of like life mission, I suppose. And for example, with I could have gone and I could have helped out planting trees for like eco groups and stuff, but I decided that one of my coaches recommended it actually and said that there are some autistic kids or adolescents in the club that could do with the support. And so I sort of went with that just because it gave me a little bit more of an appreciation of autism in different environments. It's like now, I mean, not now because of the isolation, but most of the time I spend most of my time at schools, either mainstream or special needs schools as a teaching assistant. And I could have done, because this is sort of like a stepping stone for me, so I could have done something like a waiting job or something like that if I had good coordination, of course. But I decided to go with the autism aspect so I can get a better appreciation of autism in those environments as well. So I guess, it's just about molding it to what I'm interested in, I guess.
And as a person who did have a waiting job when they were in college, yeah, I would highly suggest not doing that. I was the worst waitress ever. So bad. I was so clumsy. I would drop everything, and yeah, it was bad. But at the same time, I was friendly, and that made up for my lack of
entertaining.
Yes, so I was entertaining. So I still made good tips. I just wasn't very good at what I did. It was because people liked me. So yeah.
This goes anything.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
Tell us a little bit more about your Taekwondo championship and what all that involved.
So I think like some of the sort of like major competitions that I went to was the British National Championships, which I got a gold medal when I was a bit younger in the junior category, and a gold medal in the senior category when I was a bit older. And then I guess a step up from that, you know, because of my standing in like the ranking tables in the UK, I got invited to two quite big competitions. One being the under-21 European Championships, and when I go to these like competitions, I'm not really known for sort of being any sort of like prodigy or anything, but in like the local arena, I'm a lot better when it comes to like fighting abroad and big competitions. And so the people who I would say personally were a lot better of athletes than myself didn't get as far into that competition as me, I guess. And I went in I won about 3 matches, and then the match after that I lost to the eventual gold medalist of that competition, which is it was a bit sucky, but at least like I lost to the winner. So it meant that I could have got a medal. But that was sort of like the first big competition that I went to.
Do you still?
And then I guess.
Do you still practice now too, or?
Yeah, I practice now and again. I like to keep my flexibility up because it's very much a sport that you need to have very bendy, explosive legs. So I still try to do a little bit to maintain it just in case I want to go back into it. But I injured my leg on a bike in Thailand like an idiot. And so now I'm boxing.
Just upper part.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you feel like being autistic helped you further in, your passions with Taekwondo?
Oh, well, in some aspects, yes, but in others, no. Like, for example, if one of the problems that I had was that I usually have is authority figures, or people in charge of decisions, or people in power that don't understand what autism is, or just have a very sort of myopic kind of broad idea of what autism is. And there was this quite decorated athlete who was supervising the training sessions leading up to the Commonwealth Games that I got a gold medal in. And there was a lot of difficulties because I pretty much always had a meltdown before training sessions like that. And, in my sort of younger days, I had meltdowns before pretty much every training session. Crippling anxiety, all the digestive problems that go along with that.
Man.
Same.
Yeah.
It was really tough. And I remember one time, because the one thing that I pride myself on in my sport was not that, because I didn't think that I was naturally very gifted. It was just that I worked my butt off all the time and I put 100% in. And I remember this like manager, this authority figure, and took my coach to one side and said that, hey, look, Tom, Tom isn't putting the effort in, he's slacking, he's not, motivated to do this, he needs to kind of step up. And that was like the worst thing that I could ever hear from anyone, because that was like the only thing that I was riding on, and it was coming from someone who is extremely successful in the sport. And it really sort of knocked me on the head. And there've been loads of times like that where, people have just like overlooked me or thought something that wasn't true.
That's so sad, dude. I'm sorry you had to go through that, because I'm sure for yourself you were doing your very best, and people like that don't see those meltdowns that you have when you leave the dojo or any of that. So it's really hard to see criticism like that when you genuinely didn't even mean to be a burden. So really sorry that happened to you. That's awful.
Definitely. Yeah. It's also, it makes it even worse considering like the state of mental health that I was in at that age. I was quite severely depressed and anxious and lacking in any sort of self-confidence. So it was a big sort of knock to me. It took me a while to move past that.
I completely relate to that.
But then the happy side to the story is that I went there and everyone else got knocked out. Or not literally knocked out. I mean, maybe a couple of them. But they all lost and didn't go very far in the competition. Whereas me, as I was starting to win fights, all the coaches were like trying to come up to me and be all considerate and nice and, oh, you okay, Tom? Have you got everything that you need? I was like, yep, thanks. I was all right in the first round. I don't need your help now.
Exactly.
I didn't say that, obviously, but
Do you feel like once you got going on those matches, like your focus on the structure of the matches helped you to execute and do better than?
It's there's always a difficulty with any sort of sport because of the crowd, and the thing is with taekwondo venues is that they're very often in large halls with massive floodlights and lots of different beeps and noises and shouts going on all across the venue. So it's a very sensory stimulating place, and not in a good way. And it's difficult for me because I quite like to sort of support and help my teammates, but in order for me to like perform, I just need to take myself out of it for like half the time that I'm there, or else I'll just get so pent up with stress that I can't perform as well.
I completely relate to that. It's almost like sometimes as a professional singer, I would feel like it's hard to explain. If someone would be complaining about having a hard day or this is hard for me or I had a bad night, I wouldn't say this out loud, but I would almost think like, I'm doing the same thing you're doing with all of these things stacked against me, and I'm still doing them. So I can't really imagine what I would be doing if I didn't have those things at all.
Definitely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's tough. It is tough. It's tough being autistic in any sort of environment where there are people around or noises or pretty much everything around. Not gonna lie. So I don't know. I just think that for me it made those achievements bigger for me. It had a lot more of a positive impact on my self-esteem and my confidence because of that. It doesn't make it easier in those environments. It just sort of reassures me that I've done it before. I've done it like 70, 80, 100 times. I'm fine. I can compete. I can deal with all the stress, and that's really important.
Yes, I think. Definitely. I almost looking back when I looked at my accomplishments after realizing I was autistic, it gave me like a sense of pride. Like, what? I did that, and that was really, really tough for me. And now I know why it was so tough for me, and I still did it. So I'm a badass. It gave me this sense of accomplishment.
Absolutely. You mentioned this earlier about you injured your leg in Thailand. Can you tell us a little bit more about the year abroad in Thailand and your backpacking?
So in my second year at uni, it was probably one of the lowest points in my sort of adult life. I mean, to be honest, every year up until that point was difficult, but In particular, the second year, I had a bad breakup with my girlfriend. I was pretty much left alone. I didn't really have many friends, and the friends that I did have didn't really want to support me in that to that degree. And so it left me in a very vulnerable place, and I basically just felt like I wanted to escape from the country, go as far away as possible.
Oh man.
And it just
like that before.
And it just so happened that I did this. The course that I did was biomedical sciences with industrial experience. So it meant that it's basically like a sandwich year. So I do a year before my final year and go somewhere. Most people go within Britain. A lot of people go in Manchester to do work experience. I decided, which is, pretty much one of the only things that I've ever done impulsively, to sign up to go to Thailand and research mosquitoes.
Seriously? Mosquitoes?
That's awesome. I hate mosquitoes.
Yeah. Those little buzzy,
I'm allergic to them.
annoying insects.
Did you have to get yourself stung with them, or what would you do?
I definitely got some kind of hemorrhagic fever.
Oh no!
Like dengue or yellow fever or Zika or something like that. Definitely got something like that from them. What the people in my lab would do, they just gave no Fs at all. Like when they would finish going through the life cycles of the mosquitoes and sort of analysing them, they just let them out of the cage into the lab. And that meant that I was, I covered myself up as much as possible as you can in, 38-degree heat Celsius. And there was this little section between my trousers and my socks. And without fail, every time that I went into that lab, it was just covered in bumps.
That's awful.
That's dedication to your work.
I was joking about the sting thing, by the way. I was not thinking you seriously. Oh man,
yeah,
that's awful. Oh.
They had these little electric zappers, fly zappers that you can get, like tennis rackets. And I just go around in the morning before I started work, just seeing how many of them I could kill. And if I didn't have any tennis rackets near me, I perfected the art of squishing mosquitoes with my hands.
You just look like you were clapping to an audience that wasn't there.
Yeah, it was one-handed, just grabbing them out of the air.
Oh, nice!
It's quite satisfying.
It's like Karate Kid style.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about I found out you're writing a book, and I'm very curious about it. So, could you tell us a little bit about that?
So I've always quite liked writing. I remember there's a class that I did back in secondary school or high school, and I had this amazing teacher. I think she was called Mrs. Brown or something like that, and she was lovely. She looked like your typical librarian, curly hair, the glasses, the lot. She looked like she worked at the library. And she was one of the only
Nice.
teachers that fully embraced the needs that I had. So she would let me go out of lessons if I needed to. She wouldn't, harshly punish me at all if I turned up late and I was in panic from all the noises and people at school. She was a really lovely lady, and that sort of was the start of my creative writing, and I really enjoyed it. And taking it a bit further, I went, I did a philosophy module for GCSEs, and I got to write a lot about philosophy and stuff, which I really liked. So that sort of, set me up for, book writing and creative writing. Did a little bit of poetry, probably not something that I would ever feel comfortable with sharing with the masses, but it's very dark. Dark stuff.
Hey, poetry at all? I have problems with whole sentences, dude. So I mean,
it's actually writing and poetry is one of my specialties.
Is it?
So
Yeah.
I'm
Nice.
Yeah.
Have you got one on hand?
Somewhere, but you know what? Same with you. It's like I do it, and then I have books and books full of it, but then I don't feel comfortable sharing it. It's like, yeah. I mean, I did in school. I did win a few competitions in school, but like it was.
Ooh,
yeah,
nice.
It was, but I've got that dark stuff too now. I've got quite a few of those during my teen years. That book of poetry is somewhere hidden because if someone found that, it would be like, oh my god. Yeah. But it helps. It's great. It's like I know that I've noticed a lot of autistic people as well. We have this gift with language and writing and sentence structure. Yeah. We have an ability to make words sound really beautiful. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely like an aspect of, I don't know why it would be. Maybe it's just because we find it hard to express our emotions through body language and all those kind of non-verbal signals. So we make up for it by expanding our vocabulary and thinking of different ways of expressing how we feel through just words. Maybe that's like a new idea.
It's true. That's a good point. Yeah, it's safer.
Plagiarized it.
We have more time to think about it. We can, write it in our own time. We don't have someone staring us right in the eye, waiting for a response. Like, it's like. But what is your book about? Can you tell us a little bit more about that, or is it a secret?
Yeah. So, no, it's I'm finding it really hard to think of a way to describe it without giving away the sort of twists and the plots and all of that.
Right.
But it's basically about this guy called Rayland who's in his sort of early 20s, and he is not living the happiest of lives. It's kind of written from the angle of myself. So I've used a lot of experiences and environments from my own life and people from my friends' lives that have said that I could include them, and it's basically like it's a very sort of thinking book. So it's a lot about exploring the ways that Rayland thinks about things and his opinions and his reactions to people. But he goes through a lot of tough stuff as a kid, and he eventually sort of reaches a breaking point. I really don't know how much to divulge because I don't want to spoil it for anybody.
They have to buy it.
But
it kind of sounds like a nice mental exercise book where you're really engrossed in what's reality and what's not with this character. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's almost like that. That guy the guy at the parties who does a lot of like LSD and stuff, just like sitting down and having deep conversations about reality and stuff. That kind of vibe to it, but just a bit more down to earth and a little bit more negative and a bit spiteful and a lot of negatives to his personality. But yeah, something crazy happens and he basically, I'm just gonna say it, like he goes into this whole different world that he has no idea about, and he doesn't know why he's there or how he got there, and I'm never going to tell anybody how. that's one of the things that I'm not going to say, but it's sort of like a dark fantasy / a little bit harsh on the old reality, I suppose. Which is definitely not a tagline that I would ever put on a book.
That sounds amazing, though. I would buy that book. That sounds like a book I would read.
It sounds like some really cool parallels that you can draw from life experiences with autism that you kind of pull from that, which is really cool because I don't think enough people in the general public realize how much the fact that the fluorescent lights are on in this room is affecting the hell out of me, but I'm going to not show you that so that we can have a conversation. Yeah. And then I'm going to go freak out when I leave the room. But, like...
Sit in the toilet.
Yeah. I don't think enough people realize how often we're all losing our shit.
Or we can look fine and we're going like deep in thought in our brains. Like maybe
we've got an extreme ability to just hide.
Absolutely.
sense of dread and panic that comes upon us quite often.
Yeah, that sounds like an amazing book, though. That's one of my goals, is to write a book one day. And so, but
I think there's a lot of like autism related books coming out, but they're always non-fiction. They're always about like autistic people's lives, and I feel like there's not enough fiction from the autistic perspective. I feel like that's a bit untapped. There is this one book that I've read, and it's pretty much like one of the only fictions that I could read. I'm not much of a fiction guy, surprisingly. But yeah, it's called The Speed of Dark, and it's about this sort of dystopian reality where they've found a cure for autism in adults, and it's about this guy called Lou and his sort of navigating around the world, taking a bit more of sort of an insider's perspective on life and interactions. It's very good. It's a very good read. It's very easy to, I mean, I listened to it on, like a audio book, but it's a really good book. I definitely recommend it.
Sounds amazing.
It's really cool.
That sounds really interesting right there.
We'll get the book name listed in our description too, because
Oh yes, yeah. I forgot the book name. It's called Blackbird. It was originally called Heartland, but there is already a book and a film and pretty much a lot of things called Heartland. I think now a TV series, so I had to change it. So it's called Blackbird.
Cool.
Well, it's really cool that you're doing that, and I think the fiction angle that you're talking about really makes it, I would assume it actually makes it easier for you in a writing sense, so you're not like, this happened to me, you're like, this happened to this character. Does that feel... Yeah? Or not really? It
is sort of cathartic in certain ways. There is definitely aspects of myself in the main character. I think more aspects of myself when I was a teenager rather than how I am now.
That's really cool.
And there's a lot of things and hidden sort of background, sort of behind the scenes thoughts about the book, and how the story is going that influence what happens to him and how he thinks and his experiences and all that.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be reading your book when you get it out. It's really cool.
I'm on chapter 3.
Yeah. Oh, chapter 3. Awesome. I think, too, it could be something that more neurotypicals maybe would read just for the interesting book, and then they get sort of a peek inside of what it's like inside the mind of an autistic person.
I'm hoping that it's not going to be plated on the front that it's an autistic book. I'm hoping that it's just going to be a standalone book that people will read and go, oh, this is a bit weird, this character's a little bit quirky, and then read into it a little bit more and realize that he's autistic. That's the kind of thing that I'm going for.
That's really cool.
Perfect. Exactly. And then exactly, so then they're not starting off with, oh, I'm not going to read that, I won't relate to anything there. And then once they get in, you hit them with it.
Yeah.
They're like, wow.
In the face.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
We've asked all these questions to you, and the whole point of our podcast today was actually to ask you about your documentary. Yes. So we have so many questions about this because, like, first and foremost, what was the drive behind starting the documentary?
Oh, well, I think that that there's a lot of sources of drive to produce that all sort of congregated together for me to make this. Firstly, I was obviously becoming a lot more of an open, honest kind of speaker from my YouTube and from my podcast, and that sort of gave me a little bit of a sort of confidence boost to attempt this ridiculous project.
Well, did you get any help? Or is this all by yourself?
It's all by myself.
Wow, dude,
some help.
That's
impressive.
A little
That's
bit
intense.
of help with the ethics and the links, and my project supervisor helping me contact people from organizations and stuff. But it's all filmed by me. All the meetings and stuff are organized by me. I presented it, I interviewed the people, I did all the lighting, I edited it, I mastered it with the audio, I put in like animations and stuff, and
Man,
it was, I think I put about upwards of 300 hours in that. It put so much time into this that I don't know how much time I actually spent, but I definitely didn't spend the recommended 100 hours on it. That's for sure. Maybe in the filming, like.
Oh
man!
But yeah,
that's really impressive.
It really is. Can you tell us a little bit about what the documentary is about?
Mm-hmm. So I did the documentary as part of a science communication project, which is, you can go sort of like the research route that most people take at the end of your degree, but I decided to make it a little bit more relevant. So I decided to do a science communication, and I did a free creative piece, which is one of 3 pieces, which was the documentary. And most people did like these mini sort of e-learning quizzes that people did, but I just decided to be an idiot and to go for this massive project. And
a lot more than you bargained for it sounds like.
Oh, definitely. Like, but I think that's I always search for that extreme. I always search for the next thing that I shouldn't be able to do, and then try and do it. And I think the documentary was that for me.
That's awesome. I mean, you sound like you're constantly pushing your limits to get the word out and to communicate with others, and it's really awesome that you're doing that. And you actually reached out to us before we even launched our first episode, and really have been a great source of encouragement just by your example. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
100%.
Yeah, no, like, I mean, when you reach...
I was coming on here to be flattered.
Hey.
Cheeks are blushing.
It really is, though. It's great to have a community of people that understand each other, because when you talked about your early diagnosis and the struggles and depression, and we relate to that so much, and I really appreciate your openness.
Yeah. It's going to be awesome. And then this documentary, it's like so many people don't understand what autism actually is. They get it confused with an intellectual disability. And this documentary is so important because it's going to help educate people on the spectrum of autism and those people who aren't in the know. And I think it's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the sort of major things for me recently was that the university media sector actually I got in contact with them, and I had to sort of withhold the full documentary to a later date, because they wanted to do like this big media campaign for me, which hopefully is going to allow the documentary to tap into the mainstream media.
That's so awesome.
That's like a big step, because that means that once people are talking about autism, there's going to be more opportunities for myself and for other people to come and talk about autism.
Exactly.
I wanted to say as well, because I didn't really go over much about like the motivation and drive to do it.
Your first question.
Yeah.
And we like jumped off to something else.
It's just so interesting. Yeah,
it's fine. I think like one of the main motivations for me was firstly the Manchester leadership module. It gave me a lot more of a sense of, if I'm not going to push for change and in society, then who is going to do it? And that sort of brought to my attention to the qualities in myself that I like to hold true to. And that gave me a lot of motivation to do something quite big. And then I think in terms of emotionally and in my life, my mum, obviously she's a massive source of comfort and motivation for me to push forward in life. She always has been most understanding person, but also the most encouraging person I've ever met. and then of course my granddad,
That's
who
awesome.
sadly he passed away. He passed away due to lung cancer when I was away in Thailand, and it really sucked because
man.
sort of like the morning that he passed away, I'd like overslept, and I sort of missed being able to have that sort of last, or at least a brief part of that last moment with him. But he did. It was on a lot of like morphine and stuff, and he managed to get out, some things. I asked him what he wanted me to do, and he said, "Stay in Thailand." So stay. He told me to help people. He told me to learn, and from then on, that has been sort of like my life mission, and it's actually the source of the reason why I sort of continue on, because I have to be honest, like I don't enjoy it. Sounds very morbid and dark, but I actually don't enjoy life to an extent that I would want to sort of continue with it personally. And I'm still sort of working on those emotional issues, and hopefully it will change. But my main motivator to move forward and stay around is that I want to help people, and in particular all these autistic children and autistic adults who are quite frankly living isolated, excluded, very poor mental health lives, and it's one of the reasons why I get up in the morning. Whereas, I might just, drink myself into an early grave, I guess, as to sound as tame as possible.
No, actually, you're not wrong at all with these feelings. I mean, we've felt the same way, and we're a very different story than you. We both got diagnosed 5 months ago, and we're both almost in our 40s, and
it's crazy.
Yeah, the life struggles that we both are still like. I can't tell you how many days I wake up and I'm just like, I just want to go back to sleep. Like it's just like I don't even want to do anything. It's like
you guys have to deal with like a chronic health condition as well. Like,
it's like an added layer because being autistic and in pain 24/7 is like sensory hell.
Yeah.
So it's really tough. And then being an autistic female, I was diagnosed with every mental health issue under the sun. Borderline personality, bipolar, I mean, just crazy. Mental health facilities, like blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was just on and on and on. And so I had told myself I was crazy. And so just similar to you, once we found out that we're autistic and we're able to lift this burden off of ourselves that had been on us for so long, it was like, we both just want to help other people do that. It became like our mission to help other people to never feel the way that we had to feel. And I totally relate to that. And your documentary, that's why I think it's so important, because when I first even had the idea of autism brought to me, my mind went straight to all of the autistic characters that I've seen on television or the kids that I saw in school in the special needs program. And I thought, but I'm not like that. And that's because the stereotypes we see on television are one type of autistic person, and there needs to be more information out there that there are so many different types of autistic people. It's not just one thing.
It's like they only put kids and adults on there with autism to garner some sort of reputation for themselves, or to it's about, oh, this is such a touching moment, like you're giving joy to this person's very horrific and unfortunate life, and we're giving them the spotlight, and it feels like that's the only reason why autistic people are put on the media, which is crazy.
And it's such a demeaning way of looking at us as a people.
Right. We're like these inspirational stories for, like, I call it inspiration porn for other people to feel better about their lives and how lucky they are not to be us. And it's like ridiculous. It's like, yeah, I think it's inspirational when your brain tries to keep up with mine, because there are so many advantages that I have.
Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It makes me upset. It's like there's so many advantages that aren't talked about. We do watch this one show, I don't know if you've heard of it, called The Good Doctor.
The Good Doctor. No, I haven't heard of it.
Well, it's about an autistic man that has savant abilities, and he becomes a neurosurgeon, or I think a surgeon, at like a very young age, like one of the youngest surgeons. And it's like fantastic that there's an autistic person on television and all of that, but like the person playing the doctor is neurotypical, and he overdoes his performance
Constantly.
Like, he talks like this right here. I mean, and he just like,
oh, hello,
my
name.
Yes, exactly.
And he overdoes it so much. It's like sometimes he'll be like staring off like wide-eyed into space and all this stuff. And it's like, I mean, some of us do that, yes, and that's absolutely fine. But we don't all do that. I don't sound like that. In fact, any autistic person I've ever met doesn't sound the way he speaks. And so I think that it's so important. I just cannot wait for your documentary to come out. This is amazing. And you're having all of the support from your university. And I mean, I think it's just going to snowball into something even bigger. So you are doing exactly what you are setting out to do. And that is helping so many people. You've helped us, and you're helping change the stigma around autism by all of the things that you're doing. I think it's awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's very nice to hear that, because I'm not, although I, looking at sort of me on paper, it does look like I've done a lot, but it never feels like I've done a lot. I always feel I really don't have a lot of confidence in myself, and I don't put myself to a very high esteem, I guess. And so it's nice to hear that from people, because it's like people would assume that I suppose that I would feel quite happy in myself and what I've achieved and stuff, and but it's it's good to hear now and again, because it gives me a lot of fire to keep going.
Yeah, it is. And I think living in a world that is structured around neurotypicals and constantly being told, that what you have is flawed, or what you are is different. I mean, it's really hard to feel good about yourself. It's really hard to look at your accomplishments sometimes and feel proud, because other people sometimes will, I don't know, look at that differently. Like, oh, you're autistic and you did that. Oh, that's so special. And it's like,
yeah,
just.
Yeah, definitely. I feel there is a very different response to people that I email about my story, and when I'm trying to kind of promote myself, especially like during this past couple of weeks, which I suppose you could count as the promotion side to the documentary, which is being
absolutely,
quite stressful, and it's very different for people to hear up front that I'm autistic and then go from there, rather than the sort of normal setting, like in house parties or anything like that I go to, them talking to me first and getting an idea of who I am, and then knowing that I'm autistic. It's a whole different reaction. It's quite strange in that sense.
Yes, I've had someone actually talk to me like I was like a child.
Screw those people. I hate them so much.
I was like, that's never happened before.
It's like,
oh, Jesus.
They like act like you're a kid, and they have to be careful and calm with their voice, but it just comes across as the most patronizing load of
it's
bull.
Arrogant. Oh, it's so bad.
No, you're not understanding. I'm not misunderstanding the situation. You're just not taking on board my side of things, and I've had that so many times with people.
It is. It's ridiculous, and more reason why this documentary needs to go mainstream.
Yes, exactly.
This is like, you have no idea. Most of us have higher IQs than you do, so you don't have to speak to us like we're, dumb or something. Like, I don't. It's like I said, so many people confuse intellectual disability with autism, and it's different. It's two different things.
It's like the opposite way around, isn't it? It's like if the world was full of autistic people and neurotypicals were 1 to 2% of the population, we could classify that as a mild intellectual disability. Like,
oh my god, we could.
That's such a great way to put it.
We totally could. We could be like, they have these strange behaviors.
They're impulsive.
Social hierarchies.
Yes, they feel the need to make sure that you look at your eyes all the time, and if they don't, they get put off and think that you don't like them or you're not interested. All that kind of stuff.
Direct eye contact.
Yeah.
Very direct eye contact.
I did like a video on it recently. Like it's like a parody. It's kind of like the neurotypical syndrome, and it is mostly comedic and trying to, it's trying to be humor for autistic people, but it's also like it's nice to sort of flip the sides for a little bit to let other people know how it feels to be autistic, to give them sort of a new perspective on how we view the world, rather than sort of the opposite way around. And it's not like I don't think neurotypicals are bad. I love neurotypicals. I think they're great. Some neurotypicals are bad. Some autistic people are arseholes, but that's just people, person to person. Like I've never had an autistic girlfriend. I'm very happy with dating neurotypical people. Like they bring something to the table for me that I struggle with, like in terms of executive functioning and coping with, sort of social pressures and, giving me a bit more of a different angle on life. And I find that extremely useful. And I probably know about 6 autistic people, bar Instagram and all of the kind of media stuff that I do. And they make up most of my friends, and it's not a case of in that video that I was trying to like bash them and call them idiots or anything like that. Right. It's just people are people, no matter whether they're neurotypical or autistic. It's just different strengths and different weaknesses.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to do something like that on the opposite end, sort of like a satire, just to kind of make people think.
Definitely.
It's like there's a different perspective out there than yours, and maybe just planting that seed eventually changes.
And I definitely do think it's funny. Like some like jokes about like autism and Aspergers can be like absolutely hilarious for me. It's like I don't like get triggered very easily. Like if I hear something that sounds right and it's funny, like fair play. Like that's fine with me.
Exactly.
We all have to learn to laugh at ourselves because it's so easy for us to get negative into things, for sure. In your documentary, what are like some of the highlights that you talk about that you think are really going to hit home with folks?
I think so. The way that I've structured it is that I have 2 sort of running stories. The first is sort of interviews with people on the autistic spectrum, which provides sort of an introduction to the documentary and an ending, and sort of allows autistic people to insert their own opinions into the storyline instead of making it, like every other kind of autism infomercial or documentary or all that kind of stuff. So that brings in the sort of personal angle to it. And I think I've got about 5 people, very differing opinions, very differing in their sensory profiles, differing in everything, basically. And so I've got a very, very wide spectrum of people on the spectrum.
That's perfect.
So important.
Yeah, because, do you have enough of a contrast, you feel like, between those people where it's like no one's going to be like, person A and person number 5 is not at all the same, and wait a minute, this changes my view on autism in general?
Definitely. Like there's
nice.
Particularly one guy is my friend called Adam, and he, in his opinion, being autistic hasn't held him back in any sort of way or else. He doesn't feel like there's much differences between autistic people and neurotypical people. And then on the other side of things, we've got someone who's very involved within the sort of autism advocacy and rights and stuff, and has some very strong opinions about it. And then you've got, you know, everyone in the middle who, you know, some of them are a little bit older, so they have more of a well-informed, well-constructed opinion on it. And then you've got some people who are a bit younger who give, you know, their opinions on things in terms of their like age bracket and stuff.
That's awesome.
I love that.
But I just, I inserted those interviews just as part of it, just to make sure that I get that autistic angle to it. But the main storyline is sort of going up in, sort of describe it as going up in intensity, I guess. I start with my taekwondo instructor that I interviewed. Because he trains people with autism, whether it's sort of like classic autism or Asperger's, and a lot of neurotypical people. So he has a good awareness of getting into the business of teaching individuals and sort of learning about about autism and about like ADHD and stuff. So he has more of a transitory story to tell. So it sort of brings in people at the start of the documentary who perhaps don't have a good understanding of autism or the sort of traits and stuff. And then it sort of scales up into the next one, which is my mom, who has a very big, glamorous title and role within the special needs sector. And she talks about her experience with autistic children in mainstream schools, the sort of lacking in mental health support for autistic adults, lack of policies, all of that kind of stuff. And then we go to the sort of the end point, which is a guy called Peter Bainbridge, who runs the charity Salford Autism. And he talks about his experiences mediating between autistic adults and associations or the police. And he's sort of that mediating figure. So he understands a lot more about the lives of autistic people when they're in adulthood. So it basically, all of it just covers as much of the ground that I wanted it to cover. And I feel like it is a well covered subject. Like it's not like too deep that people who don't understand autism can't understand. And it's not too sort of transitory or, introductory that, it's not really bringing anything else to the table.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
I love that. And it's the biggest thing is I love that it's representing the spectrum of autism.
Definitely.
Not one thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Layout that you have, and you're really guiding people to see all the different sides is huge. You mentioned to me that it was a lot of time at editing and putting all this together, but something I was curious about, did you have such time constraints or something like that where you maybe have some of your best parts on the editing floor just out of continuity? Or
yeah, so there is this, when I was, so I started off the documentary having absolutely no, pretty much beginner level editing and audio editing skills. So I had to teach myself all of that stuff. And I did that during the first semester when I was writing my literature review, which, this documentary isn't like a standalone project. It's a follow-up to an actual piece of literature review that I've done for the university with all the references and all of that kind of stuff and the stats. And so yeah, I did that in the first year, got all the ethics out of the way. And then I guess there was a lot for me to do. It's final year. It's a really big weighting on your marks. So I had to revise and, do extra further reading for 3 other modules, which were quite advanced. They're quite far into the course. and then also juggle the documentary on my YouTube channel on the side and my taekwondo.
And podcast.
and podcast. I think I started doing the podcast after I filmed it all, but
Oh, that's good. So you got that out of the way.
It was a lot.
So it was really a huge effort. Like, would you say it took you over a year or two, or what was the whole amount of time in years, or would you say?
I think, well, obviously I spent the majority of the time during the second semester sort of putting it together frantically, and it wasn't really at publishable quality, and I wanted to do a bit more learning, and I wanted to tweak and edit things out enough for it to be a good story. And there's kind of like this media lingo that goes about called killing your darlings, and that basically means cutting out things that are really good but not necessarily needed for the story. That was a hard process for me, and I couldn't really do that in my second semester because I was very emotionally attached to it because of all the work that I was putting into it.
That makes a lot of sense.
Difficult.
So, would you say you're, if you had to guess, the amount of time the documentary would be if you had all of your darlings, and then the what it actually ended up being? You got any rough guess of what that would be?
Yeah, I think it's probably be about 10 minutes more.
Oh, okay.
Which doesn't sound like a lot, but in actual speaking, like watching the documentary, it is a long time, like a lot of stuff to cut out.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially since I already sort of minorly did that in the second semester. It's only until now that, you know, all this COVID things happened that I picked up the documentary and decided to run with it. I thought it'd be a good time to do, because obviously my routine was just out the window, you know.
Yeah.
And I that was a big source of routine for me, and yeah, my girlfriend's probably been a massive help with that, being understanding of me not being able to switch off and spending hours and hours at night time, and you know, stressing out about it constantly. She's been a massive help for me through this process. But yeah, for the past 3 weeks, and actually this week as well, if you include the promotion, I've, you know, been trying to finalize it and make it as good as possible with the equipment that was available to me, which is not very much.
Yeah, I don't think the general public realizes this, but I know just from the audio editing that we've done on our podcast, we have hour-long episodes, and that will take us 6 to 10 hours of editing just to the nuances. And I really appreciate you explaining like your struggles with this, because I think not enough people understand that 30-minute piece that you are watching, or whatever your documentary length of time is. I think a lot of people don't understand that was 6 months of your life that you've put into really crafting this and having it make sense so that everyone can understand it, you know?
Yeah, people only see the tip of the iceberg with things, and that's something that I've had to sort of get into my head. You know, people see the finished product, or the gold medal, or anything like that, the podcast that goes out, but nobody sees the constant bouts of panic and meltdowns and depression, and trying to build up skills from nothing in a very short amount of time and juggle all the other stuff. It's tiring for me to think about it, and it was absolutely awful. Not gonna lie. It was not a good idea. I don't recommend anybody do it. Do not do it. At least do not produce something at that length and expect to with no prior skills or anything like that. I don't know what I was thinking, but you know, it's done now.
You were thinking people needed to know the truth and understand your point of view with autism, and we really thank you for putting in that kind of work, because there's so many people that go nonverbal with just one instance of connecting with people, and we need more people to understand that just because we don't communicate or say or look you in the eye, it doesn't mean we aren't intelligent, capable, and useful in society. It's just we're different. And I think the way you explained your documentary sounds like you're really getting that point across.
I'm trying to. It's hard to, especially in such a short period of time. I'm hoping to put out some sort of supplementary stuff, maybe include some of the longer sort of uncut documentary interviews. I'm going to have someone called Esme coming on the podcast to talk about a topic. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming out that I've written more blog posts and testimonials than one can handle in the past week, just to sort of get it out there as much as possible. And it's been tough, but as I said, like this is my moment to put it all on the line, set up a website, put money into advertising, try and get it out there in this big attempt to open up the world to what autism is and what autism needs. Yeah. And hopefully it's going to make a change.
I love that. Yeah. And it's the perfect time. Everyone is sort of, forced inside trying to find things to watch and learn and open to new experiences and hobbies and everything now with the isolation. So it's the perfect time for a documentary to drop.
Yes, absolutely.
When is the official date?
The official date is the 6th of May on a Wednesday at 6 p.m. on UK time.
Right.
Which I think I don't know, because I know that in America you have different time zones for different states, don't you? Which is kind of quite difficult. I think you're about 5 hours behind, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it'd be like 11 p.m. for us in the Eastern time zone. And we will definitely post that in the description
11 a.m.
for people and link to your YouTube,
11
right?
a.m.
Oh, 11 a.m.
Yeah, you said p.m.
Oh, okay.
It's okay.
I'm sorry. We will definitely have that correct in the description. But yeah, no, it'll be on your YouTube channel, right?
On the AspergersGrowth YouTube channel. And there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff of, me sort of informing people of how the promotion's going and the editing and all that. I'm on my social medias as well, which is, just basically AspergersGrowth for everything. It's quite easy to find me on stuff.
Nice. Yeah.
Managed to catch those names as quick as possible.
Exactly. You've got a great name with AspergersGrowth and your podcast of Thoughty-Auti. It's a really
super catchy.
Super catchy, exactly.
Yeah, I know, but I had this thought that most autistic people spell it as AUTIE, but I didn't. And I don't. Yeah, I know, and it sucks.
Well,
I can't change it. It just doesn't look as good on paper.
See, for me, instead of
I didn't catch that, honestly, and I'm like a grammar person and catch everything, and I didn't catch that. So
yeah, and I'm not a grammar person at all, but the way I looked at it was Audi, like the car, but then autistic. I thought it was cool. I thought the way you spelled it was perfect. So, everyone has their different opinions.
I like a little bit of word spaghetti.
Yeah.
That's not the right word.
Yeah.
40-Auti. Yeah, it's a bit catchy.
Okay, so we've talked about all of the things that you have accomplished and things that you're doing right now. And what a lot of people don't realize is there are things that autistic people deal with that a lot of people don't understand. And unfortunately, autism can come with depression, and it can come with mood disorders and different mental illnesses, which makes doing things like this even more difficult. Can you talk about how you were able to finish some of these projects and some of the mental health issues that you deal with?
Yeah, I mean, I was when I was, diagnosed. It was just sort of like a blank, major depressive disorder, with generalized anxiety,
Same.
which is kind of sort of like
Me too.
the bog standard sort of mood disorders that people are aware of, I guess. But I was also diagnosed with these two dissociative conditions, which actually caused a lot of problems for me when I was a child. Because when you're growing up, when the way that we sort of orientate ourselves in the world is by understanding rather than feeling. I'd say to a large degree, or at least maybe for me. And
I relate to that, though. I think that's a lot of people.
And these two disorders were called depersonalization and derealization. And depersonalization basically just means that you feel like you are living life through a TV screen, or you feel like you're watching yourself from a third person view. It's not like literally you're watching yourself from a third person view. It's you don't feel as much of an identity with what you're saying or what's happening to you, or what you're doing in an interaction with someone else, and that's quite scary and difficult to understand and describe. Even just considering I was struggling to understand what the differences between anxiety and anger were, apart from the sort of logical definitions at that age. And then you've also got the aspect of derealization, which it basically just means you feel like you're in a dream all the time, and it doesn't matter what happens to you or what occurs. You feel like nothing's real, and that combination of diagnoses, or those experiences that I had, made it really tough. I couldn't navigate. I couldn't understand what was happening to me, and I went through all these trails of thinking I had certain disorders. Like I thought I had multiple personalities, because some days I was acting a certain way and felt a certain way, and then on the flip side, an hour later I could be a different person in my understanding of things, which I was basically just going through different moods, but because I needed a concrete way of explaining it that made sense to me, I sort of settled for these multiple personalities, which is a little bit embarrassing to talk about.
Sorry to hear that,
but it's it was tough. Like the mental health side of things is always difficult. I mean, just by its definition, it is mental pain and torture, and it's like having a rain cloud that follows you everywhere. And then that interacts with anxiety, and the things that help your anxiety make your depression worse, and the things that help your depression make your anxiety worse.
So true. It's a vicious cycle, and it's really tough.
Well, they're described on their own as a vicious cycle, but together they are just one spiraling mess of shite. Like, just rubbish. It's horrible. And then you've got the aspect of being autistic and being a teenager and not feeling like you're in your own body, and not feeling like anything that's going on around you is real. So it's easy to see why I sort of took quite a downward spiral throughout my life. I took very much to escapism. That was pretty much the only thing that I did to cope with it. I couldn't I couldn't do CBT. Therapists didn't get me. I couldn't express or understand myself. So I just took to getting on with life, ignoring it, and having too much sugar, maybe drinking a little bit too much on a regular occasion. A lot of stuff to try and escape the feelings that I was having. And it's hard to hold on to life when you don't feel like you're a part of life and you don't feel like life exists. And I think... Sorry, go on.
Oh, no, it's there's such a strength in you sharing this and doing the mediums that you're doing with social media, YouTube, podcasts, documentary. Like you're really helping so many people understand not just the basics of autism, but also you're going into the mental health aspect in such a deep and real personal way. And it's really awesome to see what you've done already. And
it really is.
Yeah,
I relate to so much that you just said, because I've dealt with mental health issues my entire life, and it's really tough. But for a person to have all of those issues and still choose to get up each and every day and continue going, that's strength.
It is.
It's another thing that's very impressive.
Pain into power.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's my motto.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Anything else that you would like to talk about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like sort of one of the sort of points that I had. I mean, like that was sort of a description of my mental health when I was younger, and obviously I've got a bit more of a stoic sort of mindset on all that kind of stuff nowadays. I used to have a lot of like existential crisis moments where, like if you've read about like philosophers who basically became homeless and just decided that nothing that was going on around them was real and they couldn't prove that it was real. I had a lot of those moments where I was, not moments, I mean extended periods of time where I was isolated and constantly thinking and panicking. And
same.
Oh man.
I actually, unbeknownst to me, I actually developed the mindset of a nihilist, and I only sort of recently in my third year at university realized what nihilism was, and I was like, I read it, and I'd been going on this whole sort of writing journey into trying to understand life and myself, and I got to this core concept of nihilism without ever reading about it.
Wow.
And like
Wow.
it's a massive part of me. I'm a little bit more positive than I was when I was in my third year.
And you can
a little bit more stoic.
Yes.
I tend to take the humor route rather than the deep, dark, depressing, negative route nowadays.
Yeah.
I think that the biggest turning point for my mental health was going to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist. It was only one session, but it made a massive difference to me.
That's huge.
And I went and I talked about my experiences and my life and my nihilism and all that kind of stuff. And I asked him what he thought, and he told me that I have very severe depression. And I have never been told that. So throughout my life, I've just been given the label of depression, and it was extremely life affirming to be told that someone agrees with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The psychologist agrees with me.
Yeah.
I completely relate to that. It's like validation is so important, and especially from a professional, not from like your cousin down the street, when,
The cat down the road.
When a professional validated a lot of these things for me, it was what I needed to hear.
Yeah, gives you a sense of knowing where you're at,
Exactly.
where you can go from there.
Exactly. And to also hear not just depression, but I'm sure with how intense you were feeling everything for the professionals say severe depression, it kind of did it get your attention a little bit more because they were like, oh no, this isn't just depression. This is more than what you're thinking it is.
Yeah, because it's crazy because I've never been treated like I have severe depression. It only took that one person to go, hey, you know what? All of these sort of meeting assessments that you're doing where you're scoring about 34 out of 35 on the depression scale, you know what? Those are right, and I agree with you. Never been told that. Was never told that until that one person told me, and I was like, thank God, like I'm not just a wriggling mess of emotions and feeling sorry for myself. It's a genuine thing.
Right. Exactly. It's also for me it was being able to let go of like, it's not my fault. I mean, I kind of would blame myself. Like I had some choice and I could just choose to be happy, and I just wasn't. And that's not the case.
Naturally, like it's not something that you can control. Mm-mm. And although it's not all genetic, it's a large part genetic, and it's also your life experiences, right. And you don't have control over either of those.
Yeah,
exactly. Add to that being autistic in a world that is not built for us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no wonder we have higher rates of depression.
And suicide.
Yeah. Totally.
And that's not
about 7, 8, 9 times higher.
Yeah. I mean, just to be, I was, when I was 15, I tried to kill myself and was in a mental health facility for teens. And
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah. I didn't want to live anymore because I didn't know why I was broken. I just felt like I was broken, and I had no idea why, and no real help, and no one actually telling me why. It was always just, you're crazy.
Tell me more about you.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And so it was kind of an eye-opening experience as well to go somewhere like that and see other people who were also in the same situation. And I remember it was really strange because when I was in the facility, the other people there my age, they thought that I was one of the counselors. And yeah, they thought I was one of the counselors. Yeah, because I was so much more calm and coherent than everyone else.
Together.
Yeah, and it was just like because I switched. It was like I could mask, and I was a professional at pretending I was okay when I wasn't. And and a lot of people there couldn't do that, and so it was kind of an eye-opening experience to see that and kind of be evaluated and see other people, and then taking that experience that's made that something I feel very strongly about is helping people who were at the place that I was at and tell them that it's okay and try to make them understand. I'm
so sorry that you had to go through that.
Yeah. It's like
it's horrible.
The rates are extremely high for autistic people, and I'm really lucky that I lived. So because I feel like we go through these experiences and we go through these tough times, and then it says a lot about us that we can come out on the other side and then say, you know what, I want to help someone that was me. And I think that's all what we're trying to do, and I think it's really awesome.
Banding together.
Yes.
Getting the message out.
Yeah.
And helping the people that don't know whether they're neurotypical or neurodivergent to know you've got people in your corner that you haven't even met yet. Because, I mean, like I said, dude, when you reached out to me, we were just getting the podcast started. Like, we hadn't even done our first episode, and to be like, oh wait, we're going to be guests on someone else's podcast too. That kind of support, man, was so much encouragement. You just have no idea. And that's the kind of things that we need to encourage each other on, is like, there's more that we can do together than we could ever do by ourselves.
Yeah. And being honest and vulnerable about our situations also help people to see that, we have a podcast, we have these, Instagram pages and all this content, and we look like we have it together, which in a sense we do, but like, we still struggle and we're still human. The first time that we posted our podcast episode, I cried and had a panic attack. So I was like, almost every time I make a post or something I've written, I freak out because it's like this self-doubt creeps in. And it's like you said earlier, it's like on the outside, people think one way, but on the inside, we still struggle as well and view ourselves in certain ways that are contradictory to what people might think. And the fact that we're honest about that, I think helps people to realize that we're all just trying to get through life. Nobody knows what the hell's going on. We're just all winging it.
What's going on?
Yeah.
Why are we sat here in front of a computer with a microphone talking to people in a structured format? I don't know. Why are people listening to me?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the great thing is that if anybody who's like listening to this, like, wanted some help or wanted to talk or ask a question, anybody in the autistic community, like, that the autistic community is the most open like group of people I've ever met in my life.
Oh yeah.
You can get some YouTubers who have about 6,000 subscribers. They won't even give you any slice of attention because, you know, they're not interested. But you can go up to people like Dan Jones from the Aspi world, who has about over 120,000 subscribers, and he just talks to you like he's just another person. You're just chatting to him like it's mad.
Yeah.
And that's from everybody with a small following to a medium to a large to a massive. Like, it's weird that autism is classed as having social difficulties, because to me, from experience, having conversations with people in real life and on Instagram and on podcasts and all that.
Sorry, medication time.
I feel like, you know, we are the most socially inclusive group, like, out there. It's mad.
We definitely are.
It's mad.
It's like when we first found out that we were autistic and then started following all these autism accounts and interacting with all of these people, it was almost like this belonging that I had never felt before. Because I'm an open book, and sometimes in the real world, being an open book would get me in trouble. And so I sort of learned to kind of close off a little bit. But then at the same time, if I would see someone else struggling, or if I would see someone who I felt was similar to me, because I knew the pain of exclusion, it made me never want another person to ever feel like that. So I will go out of my way to help someone else, because I know how it feels when you don't get that acknowledgement or that help when you need it. And so, yeah, the autism community has just been insanely helpful. And you're right. It's like, I've never had so many deep conversations with people on this level that I relate to in my entire life. It was just like having this entire world opened up to us.
Yeah. It makes you feel like you're actually a part of the world. Yeah. Doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's weird. It's very surreal.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I imagine it's more surreal for you guys, considering you've gone such a long time not having that. Like,
absolutely.
Really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, we were just we got to the point where we kind of embraced that we were just the quirky weirdos, you know, and we were just different, and that's fine. And we're just shit at friendships and whatever. And then, we found this autism community, and it was like, wait a minute, I'm not shit at friendships. I've just been viewing friendships in the wrong way. I have to view it in a way that works for me, which is, I prefer more online friendships to in real life. And the people that are my friends in real life are very few and far between, and there is nothing wrong with that. And people sometimes would give me shit for that, but it's like,
Now everyone's doing that. Like, we all don't have a choice. It's like...
Exactly, it's true. And I meet other people who feel the same way, and they don't give me like any problems because I don't want to talk on the phone or whatever. I mean, so yeah, it was just like this secret club that we had no idea we were a part of, and then all of a sudden we had access. It was just like amazing.
Wow, that is awesome. I feel that to my core.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're at a good spot. I mean, we've got plenty of material, even if we chop up my first 30 minutes of stumbling. I think we got plenty.
Hey, you brought it back.
Yeah. Yes. I don't think they're darlings. I think they're Huberts or something. I don't like them. Well, and thank you for coming on. We both really appreciate your time and info dumping about your interests and your documentary and your personal life. It's really been an honor to spend this time with you and explore autism in a very deep way. And we really appreciate it.
Yeah, we thank you so
lot
much
of fun.
for...
I would do it even if we weren't doing a podcast. Like,
yes,
exactly.
Same.
we need to actually sort something out to do outside of podcasting and social media stuff. I'm so bad at organizing. Like, I'm so sorry with that. Like, D&D thing. Like, I actually really wanted to do it, but I just find group chats just too overwhelming for me.
Oh, no, don't worry. It disintegrated.
Yeah,
you don't even have to worry about it.
Everybody had, it happened twice, and then everyone just fell off.
Yeah. And not even twice in the same week. It was like 1 week, then no one for 1 week, and then, it was...
We felt really bad, because it wasn't our idea. Like, someone else was kind of putting it together, and then it just sort of fizzled out.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. Like,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for all that you do for our community and, helping educate everyone. And we really appreciate you coming on our show today. And I hope that your documentary is widely accepted and is very successful. But you know what? I mean, regardless of what happens, it's amazing and it's going to be out there forever. And I think that it's really awesome what you're doing. And we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Like, genuinely thank you. Like, it's always a pleasure to talk to you guys.
Thomas, just for everyone to know, can you tell us where people can find you and what you would like to promote?
Yeah, sure. So obviously there's the AspergersGrowth channel, which is my sort of main page. You can find that on YouTube. And then you've got my social media links for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, at AspergersGrowth for all of them. Thoughty-Auti podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And then there is soon to be coming out landing page or website for the Aspergers in Society documentary. And that will be up soon at AspergersInSociety.com.
Awesome. We look forward to all of that and what amazing things you have to come in the future.
I'm absolutely terrified.
You're doing great, man. And we're here for you. And thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. And thank you everyone for listening and have a good day.
Thank you for listening to us. See you later.
Drink your water.
Yeah, drink some water. Get those chat clips, some moisturization.
Yes,
moisturize.
So funny.
Final word from AspergersGrowth. Make sure to drink your water and moisturize after every shower. Or actually in any sort of scenario. Because autistic people are always dehydrated and I have to cut out so many lip smacks. It's unbelievable. Get yourself hydrated. Get yourself some good old H2O. Rub a bit of lip balm on those lips and get ready for talking on the podcast.